All right, folks, this is microwaved one of the S.E.E. paper. I'm here today with our broadcasting division. We're giving you a fine interview of Mr. Gold, otherwise known as GoldKing and or Gold Moon of the Gold Coast Company. How you doing, GoldKing?
I'm good, Microwave. Nice to meet you. Glad to be here. Glad to have an opportunity to talk and answer any questions that are out there.
Well, without further ado, let's get to those questions. So, first of all, I think I always start every interview with this. How did you get into CCNet? I've had a variety of answers. I want to know personally how you got into this game.
Ooh, I got back in. Gotta remember my join time. Wow. I mean, I think it was a couple years back. If there was a command to check, but actually, do you know the command to check?
I believe slash player should just should be able to tell you. I don't need an exact date. I just need like sort of a vague idea.
July 27th, 2021.
Alrighty then. That's a year before me.
I got in a ways way back. I actually first joined. I entered Japan of
I
all
see.
places. They kind of taught me the rings. Didn't get to know many people. I only knew one or two player models actually, not even names. But after I got my hands on things, I kind of realized they didn't have a lot of growth. Well, actually, their own words is they don't have a lot of space for growth for new players. It's just a matter of just doing whatever's available. So I
Hmm.
kind of took leave and traveled all the way to the Antarctic. Decided to set up a boat making shop up there, designing some boats. Nothing crazy, the little wooden catamans and what may have you, and brewing up some good old beer. And then, yeah, I mean, after I made my way out of there, I got brought into the USA, and I think that's where Alabama was. Alabama was actually one of the first proper towns that I joined in, and kind of set my roots there, discovered some things, realized how the economy works. I learned a lot, actually. Had my own leaves of absences, came back, left, came back, and now I'm here, doing what I love, expanding on what I first learned on back in Alabama, and taking it to the max, as they say.
I see. Now, can you elaborate sort of on your time in North America? What positions were you given in the various like governments that you were under? How many leave of absences were there? And what connections did you build?
Man, during my time there, I mean, I didn't have many positions because when you're starting off, especially as a new player, you're trying to get your hands on things, and when you're with other new players, any discovery is like huge to you because it's just mind blowing. From understanding like mob limits in a chunk to um, certain redstone mechanics that the server sets. I mean, it's insane, and you kind of learn more and more, and eventually we got to a point where we were just like a three-man operation. I think it was me, Epic, Pandito at the time, where we were just trying to figure things out. He was trying to figure out Ragani farming. I remember that. Epic was, he was getting he was getting busy with figuring out more of the slime fun, and I was trying to expand on energy production. Fuel buckets were expensive. They were 500 back when I remember like a stack. It wasn't cheap to work
Is
with
this the
them, but
beginning of the story of how Epic has multiple variations of kelp farms?
kelp farms.
Or, well, however he makes his electricity.
No, not really. I mean,
Really?
back then it was just a little sugarcane farm, couple bioreactors. We had a lot of glowberries actually that we were using for
Yeah.
herbalism. Actually, after a while, I mean, I tried to do a little kelp farm, but the problem with that is, you know, unless you're willing to dump in a lot of energy and time, and if you make a mistake, which believe it or not, I did, I kind of realized they're not worth the time and energy that everyone hypes them up to be. I'll be exploring the world and I'll see one nation's attempt at a kelp farm and I'll see it and I think, wow, and it's just there, dead, because you can't really, like, once you make a mistake on it and you realize the mistake, and if you some people might not even realize the mistake, they'll just leave it to die. It's a really
Mhm.
unstable kind of it's an unstable idea, unfortunately.
I see. Altering back more onto current days. So obviously, after your time in the Americas, you've come back probably, correct me if I'm wrong, about 2 months ago?
About, yeah. There was talk about coming back after my leave to the Ember Isles.
Hmm.
We sat back there, kind of fiddled with some stuff, tried to get an economy going, play the role of a bank, as they call it. The bank that borrowed from a bank.
I
But
see.
after a while there, it kind of repeated itself the first time I left, where the server had an upset, players doing things they shouldn't be doing, or different changes, and once something like that happens, and like the server itself has to take a break, and which was like one of the first times that I had to properly leave. At that point, you kind of have to take a step back and look at real life.
Hmm. I see. Canning
But
again more into like the modern aspect. So obviously, you kind of when once you returned from the Ember Isles back into America, you got with people with like Epic and I believe Kai Dragon and various other figures, and now you formed your new company, the Gold Coast Incorporated. Can you kind of
yeah.
elaborate on how this has been created?
Well, when you're making a company, it's good to start with people that you know, people that you can trust, and people like Epic and Kai and Revolt were people that, well, for Revolt, someone that I got to know. Epic and Kai, I kind of knew beforehand, and once you know that there's people that are willing to put the time and effort down, and willing to put up the capital to get something like this going, it kind of starts the ball rolling, and once it starts rolling, it's hard to stop. I mean, there's a lot of growing that we're gonna do. We're gonna expand into industry, growth, helping new players. It really is. I feel like something that'll bring some stability in terms of the new player population, even some of the older players that have been in.
Hmm. Even then, though, currently, what is that you produce? How do you make the money?
Oh, well, currently, most of the funds come through foodstuffs, fuel, some energy components. Mostly, we're actually expanding now recently more into the farming industry. Biofuel is, the craze right now. Uh,
Hmm.
Biofuel, food itself. A lot of players need good food out there, and it's a matter of keeping ties and keeping up with the industry standard of what nation. And the industry standard is always what a nation demands, and we try to stay away from overly military, you know, pushes of strength against nations. It's not good for business. The death of a player, the loss of items, it puts a strain on people, which I suppose you could look at it as, oh, they need items, they need equipment, but I like to more look at it as the matter of we're giving these players a means to keep on playing without giving up and without bankrupting them.
I see. Now, you and your team personally grind all the materials that you make yourself, or do you have lower levels of employees, or is it just this 4-4?
I'm glad you asked. Actually, we did start this off grinding ourselves, and we kind of figured out some techniques to help mass produce some materials and product. But the main goal here for the company is not just to be four people working away at producing fuel or producing resources and food. The main goal is to produce a stable basis for our company to expand by giving the people who join the town the means to help themselves. Once they come in, we give them access to whatever farms, equipment, tools at a cost,
I see.
but it's just a matter of what on there? It's just a matter of giving them the opportunity and the means to help themselves, so that they can expand more on their horizons. Essentially,
For the
giving
general
them
welfare,
get
almost.
exactly whatever ideas they have. There's no such thing as a bad idea. It's just a matter of expanding on whatever ideas there are, and really helping a player figure out what they want to do while they're on the server. Because once they find what they like, whether it be making alcohol or uh, you know, gunslinging in the West, doing their thing, farming, ranching. It's about helping them find what they love, and really pushing them to do the max they output the max they can.
Hmm. Now, following on that, following on a previous note, actually, you said that you
Mm,
don't like to go into militaristic building and stuff. I think a lot of your quote unquote competitor companies, such as like the Warhead, highly focus on those sort of equipment. In fact, they're almost entirely based for that sort of stuff. And I think Gold Coast is probably one of the, if not the only, company in the server that doesn't really dwell into that military aspect. So I think where I'm going with this question is essentially, and I know you've already kind of elaborated on this a little bit, but
no,
would you
no,
ever
I
plan
understand.
on selling military stuff?
No, you see, the problem with military equipment, it's such a tired and exasperated issue. We have people who have meticulously designed and created nearly flawless weapons of mass destruction, essentially. The only use we would ever have for military equipment is for our own self defense. Because, of course, as much as we'd love to play the neutral character, not everyone's going to want to leave us alone. And, I mean, hey, blessings to you. That's your right. We're in America. It's your freedom of choice out here. But besides protecting our own assets, the only time I'd ever see us in a military, some sort of military conflict or production, would be if the order would be large enough and would be meaningful enough. If it would be a threat, like to, I guess, the security of our side of the pond, I suppose. But even then, I mean, you can do so much without using military means.
Hmm.
It really is a bit of
Fighting
not just
economically.
yeah. It's such a tired and honestly like dugout. It's like a dugout resource that everyone's doing it. Everyone has it. People have their own guy for this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Every nation has its own unique weapons and tanks and structures. I mean, even the ones that are from like back when I was just a humble beer brewer up in a cabin making boats. I mean, people were producing their weapons. They continue to do so as well. So it's just a
Hmm.
matter of sitting back, letting them do their thing, and just providing them a means to at least keep their wits about them and keep on going.
I see. Now, you said this a little bit earlier in your response that the only reason Gold Coast would produce weapons is for the protection of your assets. Now, common
Yeah.
question that has probably come a lot to almost every business in CCNet is there any, what is the level of independence from the nation that the corporation is a part of? I know that generally as a company, you guys stay in one or the other nation. You don't tend to be independent or split up. What's that kind of situation?
I'm glad you asked this. We find ourselves in a time where there is constant conflict between the major bodies that exist between our towns and the coast. And I feel that, both groups, we have people, obviously, our independents, and the people that we have independently acting on our behalf, they they have good, well-meaning connections with these very strong and I might just say formidable nations that have been around for quite some time. They, respectively speaking, they know what they're doing. They've been in this game for quite a time, and they oftentimes definitely find themselves struggling with the militarization and constant deployment of their resources while their people struggle. And I feel that, our coast being in between the two of them, and at least at large in an area where they can easily access, will give them both, well, at least the new players and the people that want to relax and take a step back to help better evolve their resources. I feel that it'll be the coast will act as like a nice barrier where they can kind of find respite and definitely act as even a neutral territory that has an equal understanding of support from both sides.
Now, when you say, and not to doubt anything that you've said, but when you say neutral territory, of course you aren't an independent function. You are
Not yet.
a part, not yet. Do you have intentions of becoming an independent state?
Well, of course, it's only fair that we do that considering our intentions. It wouldn't be fair to either side if we were constantly, representing and sticking to the trenches that they have. I mean, if you have a falling out with a friend or someone who's in the other side of your group, you wouldn't want the one person that you know to be a solid and understanding individual to choose a side. You want them to be there to equally and openly communicate and provide that aid that comes out with when falling outs happen in friend groups.
I see.
It
Now,
wouldn't be fair to the people to either or side, especially those players that we're trying to help out so they can get their footing.
mhm,
They'd be stuck trying to fight or find common ground on a frankly on very difficult to find common ground situation.
yeah. Now I see. No, yeah, that's a very honorable sentiment. But again, we as listeners have to consider this. If you guys want to form your own nation, you want to be in a neutral stance for both sides of the aisle, then
Hmm.
why have you not done it yet?
Well, it's a matter of getting our feet up. We've only been back in the game for, what would be a hot minute for what we see as the foreseeable future. And, getting your standing in, getting your footing, and, trying to figure out what's what, who's who, and honestly, re-exploring. For me, it was mostly re-exploring this new landscape that we have. A lot has changed if I'm being entirely honest. Some for the worst, some for the best, but it really was just trying to cat. It was really just playing catch up and trying to make sure that we don't step on toes we don't want to step on.
Do you think that
These are
you've
very powerful people that deserve and have definitely worked to the respect that they're owed.
Mhm. Do you think that you're still playing catch up, or have you reached the point where you're starting to establish yourself?
We've definitely stopped playing catch up at this point. We've found who works well with who. We've slowly discovered what situations benefit what nations, and we've definitely realized how to avoid angering and disappointing the people that we want to help.
Hmm. Now, obviously, you've talked a lot about why you can't immediately be an independent, and I respect that. But currently, why are you, now correct me if I'm wrong, but my most recent look at the map showed that all of your towns were within the country of the United States. Now, obviously, this is a somewhat neutral nation, but why the United States? Why not some other nation in the area?
Unfortunately, it's mostly just a financial plan. It's hedging assets against the chance of being attacked or being considered openly hostile, while considering the other side's emotions and communicating openly that you know what, this is just a temporary measure. We're just trying to hedge our bets and make sure that what we're doing doesn't get set behind so that we can open up sooner to your people. It's
Hmm.
like a Walmart that's being built on possibly desecrated land. You want to make sure you're not disappointing or abusing the trust of another side while keeping things clean so you can open up on time.
Now, I've never quite heard such a distinct metaphor, but if you think that fits the situation best, then go for it. But otherwise, regarding these things, again,
Mhm.
you've specified that Gold Coast wants to remain a neutral company, a very hand to both sides sort of stance. Where do you now? Obviously, I think if I ask this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but
No, no, please
nonetheless,
ask. That's why we're here.
fair point. Nonetheless, what are your standings on the current geopolitical situation? Because obviously, again, you guys declare
It
yourself
is rough.
neutral, but do you believe that there's a side that's more wrong than right?
I feel that we as people often lose ourselves in the conflict, and it's not just for the self interest that we have, but oftentimes when we do lose ourselves, it's because that the side we're representing becomes more deepened to us in a sense. We as humans in general have a often bad habit of becoming entrenched in ideology. And as for what side believes what they're doing is right, it would be to ask why Abel killed Cain. It's such a long history that has essentially spiraled at this point that to put an answer to that question would inevitably be wrong because there are so many different points to be made. And I definitely, as a single individual representing a small party and the grandiose view of all this, would definitely make the wrong assumption.
Hmm. To follow up on a metaphor you used, do you think Cain will kill Abel? Do you think that one side will eventually become dominant?
Um, I see what you're doing there, but I mostly meant it in the sense that originally one side believed the other did the other wrong, and
Hmm.
from there that's where it spiraled out.
I see.
Again, it's important to look at the dominions that exist and how long they've existed for. One definitely has a claim over the land that they have, but then the other believes that they have every right to be able to exist peacefully.
Hmm.
And the other side also definitely has the right to exist peacefully, but the issue stands that occasionally there's a rogue agent that missteps or missays something, and it does always seem to be a single spark that ignites the fire.
I respect your lack of naming names, so I'm gonna let the audience interpret what that means. But straying
I
away from that topic, moving back,
Okay.
obviously, you've said that a lot of things have changed as of your last time of being heavily active on the server. Can you just like give a for some of our newer players and our newer listeners, can you just give like a general like what has changed since you were once active and are now active?
Well, the first time that I kind of dipped away from from the hecticness of this very anarchy filled situation, I believe that the server had a very big upset, and it's one that I unfortunately cannot mention due to the server's rules and policies. But it was an issue that did put the server on pause for a very good minute. This pause was a result of players not wanting to follow certain rules and abusing whatever loopholes that they did find, and unfortunately the repercussions and the reversal of a lot of things caused quite the head shake on what plans existed and what plans were being set up. And we definitely did see that because of this, there was chaos, anarchy. A lot of the alliances and people who believed in what they wanted to do were forced to completely reevaluate their outlooks on certain issues because, frankly, they did realize very quickly that they were in the wrong, and it's difficult to oftentimes, look back on an issue and realize that you were in the wrong. But kudos to the people who did, and they those who admitted their mistakes versus those who stayed silent because they didn't know what they were getting into. Just because you're in the vicinity of an issue. And the second time that I came back, the wars changed, the conflicts changed. Old foes and new foes alike, they came back at each other with fire, and it was very hot. A lot of sides were being hit, and it seemed that even for me, uh, one of the I believe nearest examples would be Tumbletown. The incident of the road bombings on Tumbletown when they
Oh,
occurred,
yes. I'm very accustomed with the
they
road bombings.
oh yeah, they very nearly spiraled from being a skirmish from a border conflict to you know children going to their parents and parents meeting up, and the parents were not happy.
Yes, it was a
But
near full-out war between what was then ETM and North American nations.
over a road,
Indeed.
which is important to remember, and this does bring back my point that cooler heads prevail, but these are very strong people who without a doubt have earned their right to call themselves leaders. But unfortunately, because of the extensive amount of pressures that they go through, they do start their conversations with a much more defensive response.
Let's see. Well, edging into our final minutes of the interview here, I do have to make my most cumbersome announcement. This is, of course, my shameless remark section, my shameless plug-in, because you all deserve it, and anyone listening always needs a shameless plug-in. Now, today I'm not gonna plug in anything too specific, and I'm actually gonna plug in our subscriber system. So obviously, I think a lot of people who watch on YouTube aren't actually subscribed in game or are not actually subscribed in this Discord. And I think to those people, if you ever want to see an interview live, if you want to get exclusive papers a day, sometimes even up to a week or so before they're actually published, you gotta subscribe, folks. And every little helps. The money we get from subscriptions helps me and helps our company build more papers, build more events. So that alcohol has to come from somewhere, and that casino money has to come from somewhere. So, yeah, again, every little helps, guys. Uh, Subscribing would be amazing. It doesn't have to be a big, you don't have to be an executive, but in order to get some of our best content, you always have to subscribe. I think that was a pretty
Woo.
good plug-in. That was one of my
That
best.
was pretty smooth. I liked it.
Moving back. So obviously we have a few subscribers in the chat right now. I'm gonna open the section up to subscriber questions. But
Please.
while the subscribers are thinking of their questions, if they have any, I'm gonna open it up to you. Do you have anything you want to plug in? Do you have anything you want to ask me? And do you have anything that you want to state?
Um, Nothing in general, but I do have one thing to remind our audience. In
Go ahead.
times of war and distress, cooler heads are the ones that always prevail, and it's best to speak calmly and listen carefully. Um, a voice is only strongest when it's heard. I often find the least often.
Let's see. That's a very honorable statement.
I'm glad
Now,
you think so.
I'm gonna move back. So, what was I gonna ask? I had a specific question, but now I'm forgetting. Um, your towns. So obviously you
Mhm.
talked a little bit about nationhood, about eventually becoming a fully fledged neutral nation. Do you plan on
Mhm.
expanding your town base outside of a fort? So obviously you have, correct me if I'm wrong, four. places, maybe, or actually, it might be 5 towns now. But do you plan on expanding those towns, and do you plan on building more towns?
I More towns, I highly doubt. Creating more towns could cause issues, and if we do ever intend on this level of possibility, it would have to be through careful consideration and discussions because again, our job is to be neutral and just provide a service and expanding our town, especially when there are certain plans or certain effects, or even perhaps certain boundaries that the nations that exist within our area don't want us passing, could be an issue. And it's definitely a matter of keeping in contact and discussing, what they feel is respectful boundaries, but expanding our towns further or claiming new towns really do depend on the individuals in those towns, um, and what they're being expanded for. Obviously, farmland, like if you're building a metropolis, maybe just for the sake of the way it'll look, maybe someone won't mind. Farmlands are always nice. Someone won't mind. But when you build more roads or more certain types of infrastructure, people tend to get nervous, and it's important to keep open communications when those kinds of issues happen.
Hmm. That's very, very, very true. Pivoting, are there any new industries that you plan on moving into? So obviously we've talked a lot about like just like general civilian style, like biofuel. Are there any other materials that you plan on producing within the coming months?
Eventually, our goal is to help with creating transportation vehicles, um, possibly different types of ocean vehicles. It's mostly important to remember that our job is to provide the new players and the people who are interested a means of self sufficiency as well as a means of transportation. And, getting around and eventually becoming self sufficient. So there's definitely the stance that we have to remember that we're going to have to advance into some different areas of tech and development, but it's always going to be in the sense of a positive monetary alignment.
Hmm. Now, my final question, again, if the subscribers don't have anything to ask, is now you may find this a tad bit uh sarcastic almost, but when are you building the Discord? When is it happening?
The Discord's launch has been paused just because of some of my personal not vendettas issues that I've been having, from illness to having to leave, just for a few days. And I have been in the process of finding some models that I do like. I've been testing out some things. It's mostly just a matter of developing what kind of channels our team wants, and it's a matter of discussing with our team. They are all very individual people who do spend a lot of time and busy doing the busy work. So setting up the Discord, though it's nearing a finish for what we want to do, there's just some final details that have to be looked over and confirmed and considered.
All right, well, entering past minute 30 now. I think we end the interview there. It's been great having you on the show, Gold.
Thank
Honestly,
you
it was
so
one of the
much.
more in-depth interviews I've had in a while, and I appreciate the long time that I can post on YouTube. So again, thank you, Gold. Do you have anything else you would like to say?
No, it's been a pleasure. Do hope that once things change again, I get the opportunity to meet up and speak again. It was very wonderful, and I'm so glad that you're a gracious host.
All right, folks, you heard him. This has been S.E.E. Broadcasting Services, the interview with Gold King, Gold Moon, or Gold. And I have been your moderator, deliberator, and interviewer, Microwaved One. Thank you, folks, for listening.